She found the first photograph on a Thursday evening. She didn't scream. She didn't call anyone. She sat down on the edge of the bed and stared at it for 11 minutes. I know it was 11 minutes because the security camera in the hallway, the one her husband installed 3 years earlier, captured the timestamp. She picked up that photograph at 6:47 p.m. She put it back at 6:58 p.m. Then she folded the laundry, made dinner, and waited. She waited 43 days. That waiting is what breaks my heart. In 28 years working homicide, 8 with the NYPD, 20 with Chicago's Unsolved Homicides Task Force, I have seen a lot of things I cannot unforgettable. But a woman who finds the proof, puts it back, and says nothing, that silence is one of the most dangerous places a person can live. And in this case, it became the last place she ever lived at all. My name is Marcus Cole. Subscribe to this channel right now. And tell me in the comments, did you see the warning signs? The man's name for this account is Daniel Mercer. The woman was his wife of 14 years, Claire Mercer. They lived in a suburb outside of Columbus, Ohio, a quiet neighborhood, good schools, a street where everyone knew everyone's dog by name. Daniel was an account manager for a regional logistics firm. He traveled for work. He traveled a lot. He had been traveling to the same city, Indianapolis, Indiana, at least 3 times per month for 12 years, sometimes 4. His firm had a distribution hub there. Nobody questioned it. Nobody needed to. His boss, his colleagues, his wife, they all accepted that Daniel's work required him on the road. He was reliable. He called home every night from the road. He brought Claire back small gifts, a candle once, a scarf, a bottle of wine from a restaurant she would never visit. What Claire did not know, what nobody in Columbus knew, was that Daniel Mercer had a second name in Indianapolis. He went by Daniel Reed. He had an apartment on the north side of the city, a lease signed in 2009 under that name. He had a girlfriend named Pamela Voigt, and by 2013, Pamela Voigt had become his common-law wife in everything but the legal paperwork. He had 2 lives, 2 homes, 2 women who believed they were his. The question I always ask in cases like this is not how did he do it. The how is usually mechanical and dull. The question is, how did nobody see it for 12 years? Let me walk you through how Daniel Mercer built this structure, because it didn't happen overnight. It happened in layers. He met Pamela Voigt in October 2009. He was 34 years old. Claire was 32. They had been married for 2 years. By all accounts, the marriage was not in crisis. There was no dramatic reason for what he did. That is the part people want to resist. They want a reason, a bad marriage, a difficult wife, an unhappy home. In this case, there was none of that. Daniel Mercer simply decided he wanted a second life, and he built one. He rented the Indianapolis apartment 6 weeks after meeting Pamela. The lease was under Daniel Reed, a name he had used before, briefly, for financial reasons that a later investigation would surface. He paid the rent in cash, transferred through a prepaid debit card he refilled at gas stations and pharmacies. He opened a separate bank account at a regional credit union in Indiana. He deposited money from his salary, skimming amounts small enough not to trigger concern at home. $40 here, $60 there, sometimes $100. Over 12 years, those amounts funded a parallel household. He told Pamela he was a freelance logistics consultant. He said his work kept him mostly in Columbus, but that he was looking to relocate. For 12 years, he was always looking to relocate. Pamela believed him. Why wouldn't she? He was present. He was affectionate. He fixed things when they broke. He remembered her mother's birthday. He showed up. That is the insidious thing about men like Daniel Mercer. They do not fail at intimacy. They excel at it. They apply it strategically in 2 directions at once, and they are very, very good at compartmentalization. Now, 12 years is a long time to maintain a lie, and Daniel Mercer did make mistakes, small ones. The kind of mistakes a person notices and then talks themselves out of. Claire noticed the first one in 2013. Daniel came home from an Indianapolis trip wearing a watch she didn't recognize. He said he bought it on sale at a mall. She accepted that. In 2015, she found a receipt in his jacket pocket. A restaurant in Indianapolis, 2 entrees, a bottle of wine, dessert. He said it was a client dinner. She accepted that too. In 2017, she saw a charge on the shared credit card she didn't understand. A florist in Indianapolis, $22. He said it was for a colleague's retirement gift. She asked which colleague. He gave a name. She never verified it. In 2019, she noticed his phone was always face down on the table. She noticed he always took calls in another room. She noticed, but she didn't push. This is not naivety. This is the psychology of a woman who has built a life, who has a home and a history with someone, who is not looking for a catastrophe. The human brain is extraordinarily good at accepting the comfortable explanation. It is a survival mechanism. In Claire's case, it was also a fatal one. Now let me tell you about the photographs. It was a Thursday in March 2021. Claire was putting away laundry in the bedroom. Specifically, she was placing folded shirts into the bottom drawer of Daniel's dresser. The drawer had a false bottom. She had known about the false bottom for years. Daniel kept important documents there. The deed to the house, their life insurance policies, their passports. She had been into that drawer maybe a dozen times in 14 years. That Thursday, she reached past the documents and her hand touched something that shouldn't have been there. An envelope. She pulled it out. Inside were 11 photographs, printed photographs, not digital. The kind you print when you want to keep something physical, something you can hold. The photographs were of Daniel and a woman Claire did not recognize. They were not explicit. They were something worse. They were intimate. A birthday dinner, a vacation somewhere with palm trees, a New Year's Eve, both of them laughing, wearing paper crowns. A woman leaning into Daniel's chest with the ease of someone who has done it 1,000 times. On the back of one photograph, in handwriting that was not Daniel's, someone had written, "Our first year in the apartment. I love you, D." Claire held those photographs for 11 minutes. Then she put them back exactly where she found them. She didn't tell her sister that day. She didn't tell anyone. She sat with it. She folded the laundry. She made dinner. And she started watching. What Claire did in the next 43 days was methodical. She was a high school science teacher. She was trained to observe, to hypothesize, to gather evidence before drawing conclusions. She went through Daniel's emails on a shared family computer. He had forgotten to log out once, 3 years prior, and she had remembered the passwords she glimpsed. She found forwarded receipts, hotel confirmations that didn't match the hotels he told her about, restaurant reservations in Indianapolis. She found an email from 2018 sent to someone named P, in which Daniel wrote, "I know this isn't fair to you. I'm working on it. I promise you I'm working on it." He had been promising Pamela Voigt he was working on leaving his wife for at least 3 years. Claire photographed everything with her personal phone. She created a folder. She labeled it garden plans so no one would look twice. By the time Daniel came home from his next Indianapolis trip on April 19, 2021, Claire had a documented record of his double life going back 18 months. She still said nothing. On April 21st, 2021, Daniel Mercer opened Claire's phone. He had a pattern of doing this. She had never changed her passcode from the one he'd set up when they bought the phones together. He was not looking for anything specific. He was looking out of habit, the reflexive surveillance of a man who is hiding things and therefore assumes everyone else is hiding things too. He found the garden plans folder. What happened in the next 48 hours is documented through multiple sources: security footage, phone records, a neighbor who heard raised voices through a shared fence, and the testimony of Pamela Voigt, who received a series of text messages from Daniel between 8:14 p.m. on April 21st and 2:30 a.m. on April 22nd. Those messages began with, "She knows everything. and ended with, "I have to fix this." At 7:43 a.m. on April 22nd, 2021, Claire Mercer's body was found by a neighbor walking her dog. Claire was in the backyard. She had been strangled. The medical examiner determined time of death between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. Daniel Mercer was not home. His car was gone. He was, according to cell tower data, already driving toward Indianapolis. I want to stop here, because this is the moment in the case that I think about most. Daniel Mercer did not kill Claire Mercer in a rage. I know that is what people want to believe, that it was an explosion, a moment of madness, something that overtook him. The evidence does not support that. Between 8 p.m. and 11 p.m. on the night of April 21, there are no calls, no texts, no digital activity. He went dark. He sat with what he was about to do for at least 3 hours. The decision to kill his wife was not an impulse. It was a calculation. In 28 years of homicide work, I have seen this pattern before. Men who kill their wives after being discovered are rarely acting on pure emotion. They are acting on self-preservation. They are men who have built something, a career, a reputation, a second life, and who are watching it collapse. The wife becomes the obstacle between them and everything they have constructed. And in their cost-benefit analysis, in the cold arithmetic of a cornered man, they make the worst decision a human being can make. Daniel Mercer made that decision at approximately 11 p.m. on April 21, 2021. The investigation moved quickly. When a spouse is murdered, the partner is always the first door you knock on. Detective agencies working the Columbus case had Daniel Mercer's name within 2 hours of Claire's body being found. They had his car's location from a toll plaza on I-70 heading east by 10 a.m. They had a warrant issued by noon. What the detectives found when they pulled Daniel Mercer's financial records was, in the words of the lead investigator on the case, one of the most elaborate domestic financial deceptions we have ever documented. 2 separate bank accounts in 2 separate states, a credit union membership under a name that didn't match his social security number, an apartment lease under Daniel Reed, a name tied to a business registration Daniel had filed in Indiana in 2010 for a shell company that existed only on paper. 12 years of parallel transactions. 12 years of cash transfers. 12 years of logistical precision applied to the project of living 2 lives simultaneously. The Indianapolis apartment was searched on April 23. Pamela Voigt had not heard from Daniel since his last text at 2:30 a.m. She was cooperative with investigators from the start. She was, by every account, genuinely devastated. She had believed she was in a committed relationship with the man she intended to marry. She had not known about Claire. She had not known about Columbus. She had known Daniel Reed, or believed she had, and what she had known was a careful performance. What broke the case open in court was not the financial records. It was the security camera. The camera Daniel had installed in the hallway of their Columbus home, the one that had captured Claire sitting with the photographs for 11 minutes, had been recording continuously. Daniel believed he had deleted the footage from the night of April 21. He had not. He had deleted a copy. The original files were stored on the server maintained by the home security company, and those files were subpoenaed. The footage showed Daniel and Claire in the hallway at 10:58 p.m. It showed an argument. It showed Daniel moving toward her. The camera's field of view ended at the hallway's edge, but the audio was captured. 37 seconds of audio that the prosecution played for the jury 3 times. I will not describe the contents of those 37 seconds. What I will tell you is that after the third playing, 2 jurors were crying, and the defense attorney did not look up from his notepad. A neighbor named Gerald Osterman, who lived adjacent to the Mercer property, testified that he heard raised voices at approximately 11 p.m. through the fence separating their backyards. He testified that he heard what he described as a thumping sound and then silence. He had assumed it was the television. He had gone to bed. He had not called the police. He would spend the rest of his testimony not meeting anyone's eyes. A gas station receipt was recovered from Daniel's car, purchased at 1:14 a.m. in Dayton, Ohio, consistent with a man driving from Columbus toward Indianapolis after midnight. A clerk at their gas station identified Daniel from a photograph. He remembered him because the man had been agitated, had dropped his change, and had not stopped to pick it up. The defense's strategy was predictable and ultimately unsuccessful. They argued that Claire's death was the result of an intruder, that Daniel had left the house before the murder occurred, that he was not present. They pointed to a lack of physical DNA evidence directly connecting Daniel to the strangulation. They argued that the audio recording was ambiguous and that the jury was being asked to convict on emotion, not evidence. The prosecution countered with 47 individual pieces of evidence. Among them, the financial records establishing motive, the security footage establishing presence, the cell tower data establishing movements, the text messages to Pamela establishing knowledge, and the testimony of a former colleague of Dame's who stated that Daniel had once told him in 2018 that he had a situation at home that could get very messy if it came out. The jury deliberated for 9 hours across 2 days. On November 14, 2022, they returned a verdict of guilty on 1 count of first-degree murder and 1 count of domestic violence. Daniel Mercer was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He has not spoken publicly since the sentencing. Pamela Voigt gave an interview 18 months after the trial. She said one thing that I have thought about many times since. She said, "The person I thought I loved doesn't exist. I grieved someone who was never real. I don't know how to explain what that feels like. It's like finding out your whole past was fiction." I have interviewed a lot of victims in 28 years. That sentence, "my whole past was fiction," is one of the most precise descriptions of what it means to love someone who is maintaining a double life. Now I want to talk about profile, because in my experience, men who do what Daniel Mercer did are not random. They have patterns, and those patterns are visible if you know what you're looking for. They are almost always excellent at compartmentalization. This is the key trait. Not lying exactly, anyone can lie, but the ability to hold 2 separate emotional realities simultaneously without bleed-through. To go from Pamela's apartment to Claire's dinner table without carrying anything between them. This is a psychological capacity that most people do not have. The men who do it are not necessarily sociopaths. Some of them, if you met them, would seem warm, present, attentive. That attention is real. It's just that it isn't exclusive. They tend to be logistically precise. Double lives are maintenance-heavy operations. They require scheduling, financial management, consistent cover stories, and the ability to track a large number of variables simultaneously. In my experience, these men are often above average performers in professional environments. They bring the same executive function to their deception that they bring to their work. They tend to increase surveillance of their primary partners over time. As the double life extends, the anxiety of exposure grows. Daniel Mercer installed that security camera. He checked Claire's phone. Men in this situation often become controlling under the guise of protectiveness. They want to know what their partners know. They almost always have a history of small deceptions that predate the major one. A man who builds a 12-year parallel life did not begin with the parallel life. He began much smaller. A lie here, an omission there, a truth shaped into something more convenient. By the time the double life starts, deception is already fluent. And finally, and this is the one I want you to hear, they do not believe they will be caught. Not because they are stupid, because the ongoing success of the deception becomes its own evidence. Every day they are not discovered is a day that confirms their control of the situation. After 12 years, Daniel Mercer was not careful anymore. He was confident. The photographs were in the house, in the drawer, because he had stopped believing anyone would look. Confidence is what kills them. And in this case, it killed Claire first. I have been doing this work for a long time. I have worked 847 documented homicide cases across my career. A significant portion of them, more than I want to count, involved a victim who had, at some point, seen a warning sign and decided not to follow it. The florist receipt, the unfamiliar watch, the phone that was always face down, the colleague whose name she never verified. I am not blaming Claire Mercer. I want to be absolutely clear about that. The only person responsible for Claire Mercer's death is the man who killed her. But I do think about those 43 days, the days between when she found the photographs and when she died. I think about what might have happened if she had called someone on that Thursday evening, a lawyer, a detective, her sister, anyone. She chose silence. I understand why. Most people in her position would choose the same. Silence feels like control. Silence feels like gathering strength. Silence feels safer than the explosion that comes with speaking. But silence in these situations gives the other person time to calculate. If you are watching this and something about it feels familiar, a partner who travels more than the work requires, financial activity that doesn't add up, a surveillance pattern you explained away, I am not telling you what to do. I am not in a position to tell you that. But I will tell you what I have told every person who has asked me in 28 years of this work, what to do when they find the photographs. Don't put them back. Case file is closed November 14, 2022. Homicide conviction. Life without parole. The Indianapolis apartment was vacated by the end of the month. Pamela Voigt moved out of state. The Columbus house was sold at auction. The street with the good schools and the neighbors who knew everyone's dog by name went back to its ordinary quiet. There is a security camera in that hallway still. The new owners don't know what it captured. Some things outlast the people they recorded. My name is Marcus Cole. I worked homicide for 28 years. I'm still working it. Stay sharp.